Hey, I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Give this video a like.
Podcast below in the description. Check that out as well. Do it right now.
All right, John. Adam Schefter, who's been on this podcast, was on Matt Maiocco's podcast and talking about quarterbacks. Schefty said this. Now, if you're asking me today who I would guess the Niners draft, I would guess Mac Jones today. But we're also 3 weeks away from the draft. There are going to be a lot of meetings. There are going to be a lot of discussions. There are going to be attending workouts. Schefter said, I think they go into this looking at 3 quarterbacks who will be there. They're obviously going to watch Justin Fields work out again. I think they have a high opinion of Trey Lance, and I think they have a high opinion of Mac Jones. So I think they like all 3. I think they have an open mind right now. Open mind right now. Now, you and I, we have been very open-minded over the possibility of this Mac Jones stuff. It's not real yet, and it's certainly not over, John. And Schefter is telling us this is not over. We have not come down the stretch yet of this Kentucky Derby.
Well, one thing I saw today on the internet streets was, the backpedal has started. And what had we been hammering home for weeks? This franchise has had a consistent theme to it. They took over the leakiest operation since the Titanic went down. It was, an embarrassing joke, was it not? Jim's last year, and then the year of Tom Sula and the year of Chip. They were a Cleveland Browns. When Mark Davis took over the Raiders, they were a Lions. They were a laughing stock. And it wasn't just because they were losing. It was because of everything that was coming with it. That completely changed. And Lynch, remember, early on was really adamant about, I wasn't going to take over something. And it was never going to be are Kyle and John going to talk? It was were there other little leakies? And it was kind of is the owner talking a lot? That was the thing. People forget this now because we are years removed, and it's just, listen, it's natural for us all to not remember shit. But I think people underestimate the consistent theme of the leaks were coming from Jed York. That Jed could not keep his mouth shut. And remember, John Lynch said when he took the job, he's like, yeah, I said a couple things, and I just wanted to see if they came out, and they didn't. And I felt more comfortable. Do you remember that?
Yes.
When John had mentioned, in an interview process, he had said a couple things and just kind of wanted to keep his head on a swivel. Yeah, he tested them. And you know what? Since they've been here, they have been really, really quiet. And you're telling me now that the whole world just knew they were going to take Mac Jones? I never believed it. And the backpedal, we talked about this the other day. The theme, or not the theme, but the consistency of this time of year, the rinse, wash, repeat nature of it. The sources leaked out, everyone freaks, and then the draft happens, and it's the opposite. It happens every fucking year. The same reactions, the same people going on TV. It's racism. It's, these coaches are idiots. It's blah, blah, blah. It's just, it's oh my God, we do it every single year, end of March, early April. And then boom, the dude I can't believe Justin Fields went 17th. It's guys, the draft is 3 weeks away. What are we arguing over, right? Let's just pump the brakes a little bit. And I just think this is headed where it's headed. That Mac Jones, we talked about this also last week, that when you look at the players that they've invested a lot in, have been big-time traits guys. Whether it be their high draft picks in Bosa that have done well. Bosa's a great example. McGlinchey's not a great example, right? The success they've had, with Debo and Ayuk, these guys with high-end traits. And Mac doesn't fit that. Trent Williams, who they just traded for, complete freak show, literally sat out a year, came back, Pro Bowl. It was if that to me, wouldn't you say Trent Williams the definition of an NFL freak? Literally disappeared for a year. Then they had no OTAs, came back, was made the Pro Bowl. It was honestly, it was pretty eye-opening. And then it's also eye-opening when you haven't followed his career that closely, how enormous he is. But that's who Kyle Shanahan and Mike Shanahan drafted once upon a time. So now they're just going to take the guy with the lowest floor. And you mentioned before we hit record, and I think I got forwarded the same picture of, there was a picture going around the internet streets of Tua and Mac standing next to each other. They look like the same size. So it's not like Mac Jones is some 6'6" pocket quarterback with some hose. And we'll get into Trey Lance here in a second, but I don't view this as a backpedal because I never bought into it. Now, I I was like, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be totally shocked if they picked him, but I didn't think anything was set in stone with Mac Jones 3 weeks ago. Well, that would have been, like I said, if they take, and it's still, they still could, and I stand by what I said, it'd be the most arrogant draft pick in the history of the league.
Nothing's over. Nothing has changed since we first started talking about this, but it was a couple of things were alarming. How universal the agreement was. This far out, before they'd been to see him, before they'd been to see Trey Lance, before they'd been to see Justin Fields. What has changed? Well, time. First of all, it's 4 weeks. It's like the one thing I'll say about the Zach Wilson to the Jets rumor, like that thing has been steady and strong and hasn't really changed for a while now, right? This Mac Jones thing came on 100 miles an hour. And to your point, and I said this about Mac and Kyle's history, I don't think it really matches what Kyle would want. But, and I think these other guys, I think taking a risk would. But let's just think about this for a second. Because you asked me this question before we started recording. What has changed? Like, why would the narrative or the reports, or however you want to phrase it, change from they're all in on Mac Jones to what Schefter then said now, well, maybe they like these other guys, maybe they're open-minded, whatever. Because I think to say they like him today but they're open-minded is to kind of hedge on things might not be Mac Jones. But what has changed? I mean, Sam Darnold got traded. So if they were playing a game with the Panthers, I guess that's something that changed. But they've been ahead of the Panthers for a few weeks now, right? I mean, what's changed? Why would this change today? Well, what has changed?
Well, because the Jets could have been open-minded to make a trade.
Right.
Right? What if there was a trade from the Panthers? If you love Trey Lance and you knew the Panther, like part of this, the draft process, I've always said this about value, isn't just about knowing where you can buy the player, right? If you can get a player at 17 and you're drafting at 8, it makes sense to try to get back to 16 to 18 range. Mm-hmm. But if you know a team at 15 also likes the player that you love, that they would take the guy if he's there, or if where you're at just is one spot above you and will jump you, then you can get screwed. And it's why it makes sense to not only lie, but push lies this time of year. What if the Jets went, well, what if we get 3 ones and keep Sam Darnold, right? What if we could, and not move down that far? Like we could just go to 8 and still get a tackle. Or what if it turns out the Carolina Panthers, the guy they loved, who they thought, let's say their board went Trevor Lawrence and Trey Lance number 2. It wouldn't make sense for the Niners to let out Trey Lance was the reason they traded that package to the Dolphins. It would make 100% sense for them to leak that it was Mac Jones, because then it's like, well, they're going to take Mac Jones. Don't worry about it. Because what the fuck does Sam Darnold have in common with Mac Jones? Like their playing style, really, like I've been saying, is more like Burrow. So you tell me, guy, because the rumor happened. The people doubled down on their bet on Mac Jones going to the Niners, and see, Carolina Panthers waved the white flag because they couldn't get Mac Jones. Well, they didn't acquire a guy that plays anything like Mac Jones. They actually have a Mac Jones-like player in Teddy Bridgewater. It actually shows you that they are enthralled would be the wrong word because they didn't spend that much to get Sam Darnold, but they were seeking an athletic type quarterback, right?
Well, yeah, and again, like the other thing, what they have, like the Niners, the other similarity with the Niners is they do have a quarterback on the roster under contract if they needed to draft one player who might need a redshirt year, quote unquote, right? Like what Mel Kiper, when he was on this podcast, suggested. Now, we could talk about whether or not Trey Lance should do that or not, but that's another similarity that the Panthers have with the 49ers is they do have an expensive quarterback on their roster. They could, in theory, just play that guy while they develop the backup quarterback. Did you mention Joe Brady yet when you mentioned?
No, I don't think I did.
I mean, you think about the quarterback that Joe Brady had a lot of success with at LSU. He was an athletic quarterback, right?
Yeah.
Burrow. So I do think there are some Burrow-Darnold comps athletically. Like, I think that's an interesting comp you just made. There's not a lot of similarities athletically between Mac and Burrow. We've had a few people. We talked about that the other day, and then somebody DM'd me. Apparently, Joe Burrow was like an all-state point guard coming out of high school.
Yeah.
Super athletic, much more athletic than Mac Jones. Even though some people
wouldn't you
Mac
say
is
in this
athletic.
once Urban got there, the level of quarterback they were going at in recruiting athletically was different than probably the Krenzels you were naming when we went through it years ago. Yeah. They were going after a Cam, a Tebow, like an elite guy, because that's what is Urban. When I think Urban Meyer, I think an athletic quarterback, right?
Absolutely. Alex Smith. The other thing that Joe Douglas, Eagles, Howie Roseman, one move. It's never one move. It's always three moves with Howie, right? Does the trade back with Miami. What if Joe Douglas wanted to move back to – what if he had considered, I'll go to 8 with Carolina, 2 to 8, and then maybe I'll try and come back up to 4, right, with Atlanta. Maybe I'll go back up to 6, whatever. Like, he could have been considering that.
And add a first-round pick along the way.
Yeah, like – and then I can move back and maybe I still get a guy that I like, right? Because if they both like Lance – maybe Joe Douglas is thinking, well, I can go back to 4. Maybe I like Fields enough. I don't know, whatever. You start thinking about all these scenarios where it's not black and white sometimes, right? It might be just a value play. Well, I can get this guy at 2, but I like the guy I could get at 4, and I could add another first-round pick. Like, maybe that's worth it. So there were some reasons, and you and I talked about this when the Niners traded for the 3rd pick. And I said it. I would not sleep easy. I know everyone's saying Zach Wilson. I know they've talked to the Jets. If I were the Niners, I wouldn't exhale until I'm on the clock, and I know for sure who I'm drafting. And I still kind of feel that way, just because
I know they don't. I know they don't get the same. The money doesn't come from the same places anymore. I do feel it'd be Mike. When I think McDaniels, I think LaFleur. Like they were like 2 peas in a pod. You're like, how would those guys not be communicating? Let's say me and you went to like rival podcasts, but we were still buddies. I guess the Jets and Niners aren't rivals, but competing for the same stuff, we'd still talk. I just have a hard time thinking that those organizations, through their coaches, don't know, unless Kyle just hasn't told them.
Kyle might just know naturally with you don't put it this. Here's a better analogy. I think we split up and don't talk. Do you think I could guess if you were drafting 2nd, I was drafting 3rd? Do you think I could guess the like what I think you would do? Do you think you could guess what you think I would do? Like, yes. So they might not even have to talk to kind of know who Mike LaFleur would like.
Yeah.
No, it's not his call.
Exactly who Kyle loves. Exactly who Kyle loves.
Yes.
Kyle might have told Robert Saleh during the fall, right? Like, hey, we're out of it. What if I told you?
Here's the John again.
He started watching some of the college quarterbacks in December.
They've also all talked on officially. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have talked to Joe Douglas. They've talked about Sam. They know all this stuff, these discussions, they've all talked to each other. Now, maybe about something else, but you're kind of fishing. Again, it doesn't seem. Yeah.
Joe Douglas looks like a guy that can keep a secret, doesn't he?
Yeah, so does Kyle Shanahan. But you're saying if you were to trust each other?
Yeah, I'm just saying I do think they could work hand in hand and keep a good working relationship to each other.
Well,
like Joe Douglas, salt of the earth, blue collar lineman.
Gotcha.
Like he's that type.
Yeah. The Niners, multiple people were trying to trade up to 3, and that thing stayed quiet for a month. I believe that discussion started based on what John Lynch said at the beginning of March, because they were done watching the quarterback tape by the end of February. So they started trying to move up at the beginning of March.
I think the key now is for the people that just, intake this content like cocaine to their brain. There's hope now. There's hope. The back pedal is starting.
Just remember who did not go hook, line, and sinker on Mac Jones, everybody, okay? Now, if he gets taken, then that's a different conversation.
Yeah, then we'll figure it out from there.